Oh, hey Matt. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, we're just getting my brother onboarded into Overwatch, kind of making sure that we get his settings knocked out correctly. So we went through, made sure that mouse sensitivity, acceleration was turned off, enhancing mouse precision was turned off in the driver settings, and now we're in for Razer. This is DPI. So for your DPI, what is it currently set to, Colin?
It was set at 400.
Okay, so that's actually not too bad, because a lot of them, I'll see the DPI get set to 1,000, and that's not terrible. It really just depends on your level of comfort with it.
I would be a great teacher.
Would you now? You'd be a great teacher? Why is that? But so here's what we're going to do. Since you're already at 800 and your DPI is at 400, I want you to go...
MLVL 235.
Level 235, yeah. Yeah, I'm on my Waffles account here, my Smurf, or one of my Smurf accounts. I'm level 14. So Colin, if you'll take your mouse and physically move it so that your mouse cursor traces from one side of the screen to the other, left to right, and just see how that traversal feels on your mouse pad. Make sure that your mouse you're not having to lift your mouse up repeatedly in order to get from one side of your mouse pad to the other. It should be one continuous motion, preferably using, let's say, a half of your mouse pad or less. Like maybe if you can get away with just having it be a quarter of your mouse pad, that would be best.
It's enough that I don't even have to move my wrist at all.
Oh, so it's still pretty dang sensitive then, right?
It's good enough. I mean,
okay.
I go from one side to the other side without having to move my or lift up the mouse pad.
Okay. Now, what size is your mouse pad, roughly? Guess.
It's probably about a foot by 8 inches, 8 or 9 inches.
Okay. So we'll call that kind of like a standard mouse pad size. For your setup, it might be worth just trying to kind of, I would say, try opening up a few things with your mouse, move around some icons, and just see how that feels. See if it feels too fast or slow. And I'm saying to do this in Windows, not in Overwatch, not yet. Just make sure that speed is comfortable with how you would normally use the computer. You don't want it to be too fast or slow to where it's like you're trying to click on an icon and you're finding that your mouse is like way overshooting just opening up a program. Basic stuff.
Okay.
Is that roughly what you would expect? Is it kind of behaving?
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, it's not too snappy that I can't control it and keep up with it, but it's...
Okay. Yeah, and for the size of your
All my
mouse pad...
settings are default and I still do good.
Yeah, for most people setting their... Matt was just saying in chat that all of his settings are default and he still does good. Yeah, and it's definitely the case that for most people it is going to be absolutely... You can play with defaults and get a pretty good experience. But what the trick is right here is that what I'm going to be doing is training his brain to play an FPS even when he's not in the game. How does he do that? Well, there's a trick to this, and that is synchronizing the movement of the character in-game to the movement of your mouse while you're in Windows and using the computer normally. So what's happening is your brain gets used to moving your mouse X number of inches and achieving a movement of X number of inches on the screen. And so you learn how to translate that on the fly. You don't even have to think about it. Your brain just builds this muscle memory, and over time, you just sort of expect that kind of motion. All right, so what I'm going to do, I've got my piece of paper, and I'm going to be doing this on my mouse pad. So you're going to align the side of your mouse with where you're facing exactly on that line, straight in front of you. All right, and then you're going to move side to side until you hit that other line on the other side of you. So you're gonna trace that from one side to the other, and then when you get to that spot where you're looking exactly 180 on the other side of you, that's where you'll stop and get like a pencil or something and mark on that paper where your mouse completed the motion. So if we're looking at the piece of
180
paper,
is in, like, looking forward and then looking backwards.
yep, looking straight ahead and then looking straight behind. And now the trick is you'll want to measure as close to one stable edge as you can. So like for this, the bottom left corner here. And then when I get to the other side and I'm facing 180, you want to make sure that you trace on the same side. So in this case, if you guys are looking at the stream here, it's going to be this side with the buttons that I started with. Okay, so I want to trace from that edge all the way over here. All right, so that we are tracing off of this edge. And then once you've done that, you'll have a line which hopefully represents the distance from one side of the screen, or the distance it'll take for you to physically move your, whoops, I'm pressing my button here. The distance it'll take for you to physically move from facing in front of you to facing
It's like
to the side of
space
you.
training learning how to steer the ship.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's like you're saying. It's like space training, learning how to steer the ship. It's a little bit like that. Yeah, and the idea here is that this distance that we've taken so much pains to measure correctly will hopefully be something that you can repeat on your mouse pad to get the exact distance that you have to traverse with your mouse in order to be facing in the opposite direction exactly. What we're going to do is measure that distance now with your cursor in Windows, in your outside of the game. So you take your cursor left to right, measure the distance that it took for you to traverse that physically with your cursor, your mouse, out of the game, all right? And then once you've got that distance down and marked, then you'll go into the game and you'll want to continually do this exercise. It's probably going to take you a few tries to get it. You'll want to go into the game and make sure that you can move the same distance left to right and have it accomplish a 180. If it's overshooting that distance, then you'll want to make sure you go into your game options and go to controls, sensitivity, and keep dialing it up or down, depending on where you're at, to keep it from overshooting or undershooting that 180 distance that we just measured. Because again, we're taking your distance in Windows, in your, outside of the game, of your cursor going left to right on the screen, fully left to right on your desktop, and you want to have that replicate a 180 in game. And by doing that and setting your sensitivity, you're going to have to tweak it. It's going to take a few shots. You'll eventually get to a point where your ability to move left to right will replicate your ability to move front to rear in game, 180. And why does that matter? Well, what it'll do is it'll train your brain to consistently do flick shots and tracking the same way that you would do drag a window in your computer. So if I were to drag a computer screen around, let's say, let me grab a random window here. I'm going to grab this browser here. So I'm going to open up a web browser here for everybody to see on the desktop. And it's not really anything exciting, but so this motion, if we think about it, the idea of moving this window around in my screen is a little bit like tracking, because I know where I need to go.
Deep pro level mode lol.
It is. I mean, it's like, this is some stuff that is kind of, it's overkill for a lot of people, but I think a lot of us get really frustrated with our aim, and we think that if they just try harder, that we're going to get good, right? So the problem here is that if your sensitivity in game is vastly different than your sensitivity out of game, you're going to train your brain to operate one way when you're using your computer, and a completely different way when you're trying to get a flick shot or a tracking shot in game. And so you have which is why some of us, you'll notice when you're playing a game, you're constantly picking up your mouse. And you're like, why the hell am I constantly having to reposition my mouse? It's because you're running out of runway for your mouse because you haven't calibrated it correctly. And that's the whole point of having all these settings, and nobody ever sets them because they don't understand what they're trying to do, what's the goal, what are we trying to accomplish. So we started, to recap, what we did was we set my brother's, move that out of the way. We set my brother's settings so that he can move his cursor around in Windows, like just using his desktop, using his regular computer, a comfortable amount. We want to make it so that hopefully he's not using the entire distance of his mouse pad in order to just move from left to right on his screen, okay? And once we get that comfortable out-of-game experience with the cursor moving it around, right, just regular mouse movement, then we're going to calibrate against that. So to calibrate, we're going to create, the best scenario is really to just get a ruler and find out, or measuring tape, and find out the actual distance that it takes for your mouse to traverse from the left side. So if I were to take my cursor over here and move it from the left side of my screen to my right, measure the physical distance that you had to move your physical mouse in order to accomplish that motion. And then you'll go in game and tweak your settings in game until you get the exact same motion by doing a 180. So for me, it's 14.5. Yours will probably vary greatly. And so if I'm looking at, we did this by standing in like a doorway in game, and you'll just find a line. Make sure you're standing as close to the center of that line as you possibly can. You're going to look straight in front of you and then move slowly, usually from one side to the other until you get a 180 and you reach that line on the other side of you. Now, for me, I kind of overshot it a little bit just because I wasn't paying attention. But if you take your time, go nice and slow, you'll find after a couple iterations of this that the motion that it takes for you to accomplish a 180, once you've tweaked the settings, will eventually be the same. Up or down, you'll have to tweak them. And the fun part is, initially, you're going to be a little bit like, whoa, this is weird, this doesn't feel right. But your brain will quickly correct because it'll realize that the motion that you're programming into it is the same all over the place. And in fact, it's so programmed in for me now that I've actually gone the extra mile. And I'm in no way a sponsor of these people. Again, I don't really do sponsorships. I don't really care about that shit. But there's this nice site that I like to use called Mouse Sensitivity. MouseSensitivity.com, same aim, different game. And the whole idea here is that you get you can dial in your profile for, say, Overwatch. So we're going to do the calculator. All right, so this calculator will then let you put in, all right, so we want the, let me find, convert, I find Overwatch on here. Overwatch, all right, and this will be hipfire in this case. And then for me, it's 14.5 in-game, and I put in my monitor resolution, all that. Physical size of the monitor, you can put all that in. And what it'll do is if you're wanting to play another game, you can then just click on that other game and it'll tell you exactly what the sensitivity needs to be for that other game. Sorry, but we've got an ambulance blowing up in the background. So yeah, that's how you would translate that. So now that you've done all this work in Overwatch, you can then make that portable and take it to other games as well, so that you're not just simply stuck with, well, I calibrated my Overwatch settings, now I got to do this for all my games. Nope, you can get that calculated pretty much instantly, so you don't have to ever do this again. So you're finding it's pretty good, Colin? Are you getting?
Yeah. I got it pretty well set up now. I had to go up a little bit on the sensitivity in game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet.
So I'm sitting at right at 20.72.
Yeah, and see my DPI, it's going to really vary entirely based on your comfort level, what you feel is best. For me, I wanted a lower sensitivity so that I could intentionally use my whole arm to aim. And also because I'm using a larger area, I'm able to more precisely aim at little spots because I don't have to worry about like a fraction of a millimeter distance throwing my aim off just enough to screw with me.